Hi class, well today we're going to learn about the 3 different kinds of speeches that you can choose from in order to do your academic speech. But before we get into the 3 different types of speeches, just a quick overview of the academic speech assignment. Remember, for this you're going to turn in an outline. Your outline will be worth 100 points. This is a 5 to 7 minute speech. The outcome will be that you'll be submitting your typed outline on Canvas. Again, that's going to be worth 100 points. And what we're really doing with this speech, the real difference between the academic speech and the critic speech, we're just making the speech longer. We're going to have 3 main points instead of 2. And the big thing we're going to learn with this assignment, we're going to learn how to incorporate sources of evidence into the flow of an actual speech. Public speaking a little bit different if you're giving a presentation with evidence. It's not like you get to the end of the speech and you go, oh, here's my works cited, and then you give us a list of where you found the information. In public speaking, we're going to incorporate what we call the source cites during the actual flow of the presentation. So that's the big thing we're learning as we take the jump from the critic speech to the academic speech. So the first thing that we really want to come to understand would be the 3 kinds of speeches that we can choose from to do our academic speech outline. So the 3 types of speeches that you can choose from will be 1, an informative speech, 2nd, what we call a behavioral persuasive speech, and 3rd, what we call an attitudinal persuasive speech. And really big picture, the 2 choices here, I can do an informative speech or a persuasive speech, but with the persuasive speech, depending on the topics, 2 different ways to structure and organize that particular information. And I've always felt as students in terms of teaching public speaking, probably the hardest thing to really get students to understand is that difference between the informative speech and the persuasive speech. And so what I want to do now is I just want to break down. Once you get your topic, you're going to need to know what kind of speech it is because that will determine the structural format or the outline format that you'll use. So when I'm teaching topics and how to tell the difference between topics, I like to use the process of elimination. So let's start with the informative speech. So basically, an informative speech can be a speech on anything as long as the content is not controversial in nature. And you also want to make sure that the topic is significant and relevant enough to the audience so the audience has a reason to listen to the information. And so informative speeches, I think, also are a little bit easier than persuasive speeches, right? It's easier to teach than to get people to get up and actually do something. So the important thing here is to understand with the informative speech, very broad category, lots of topics can fit in as an informative speech. You just don't want to do a topic that's controversial in nature or focuses on a problem to be solved. The behavioral and the attitudinal persuasive topics or outline formats work much better for that. So essentially with the informative speech, any topic not controversial in nature and does not focus on a problem to be solved. That takes us to the next types of speeches, the behavioral persuasive speech and the attitudinal persuasive speech. Both of these are persuasive speeches. With the behavioral speech, this really focuses on a problem to be solved. So a nice way to describe the behavioral speech, that's a speech where you're focusing on a problem and you feel most of the people in your audience will agree that the problem exists. The goal in the behavioral persuasive speech is then come up with solutions that you'll give to the audience, and the idea is to persuade the audience to take action to solve the particular problem. So really with the behavioral persuasive speech, it's exactly what it says. It's a persuasive attempt to change the behavior of the audience. The attitudinal persuasive speech focuses more on an issue of controversy. And so kind of the way I like to break it down, once you have a topic and you think you're going to do it as a persuasive speech, the way to tell whether it's a behavioral persuasive speech or an attitudinal persuasive speech is to look at the essence of the problem. Let's say I want to do a persuasive speech on the subject of depression. So I would look at the problem of depression and I would ask this question. Would most people in the audience agree that depression is a problem to be solved? We wouldn't look at the subject of depression necessarily as an issue of controversy in the sense that you wouldn't have some people for depression. Hey, depression's good. We got to get a little more of that, right? I like being sad all the time. Or people who are actually against depression. So, because you wouldn't have people that are really like, depression good, I'm for it. It's not an issue of controversy. Most people would agree it's a problem to be solved. So that would fit into the behavioral persuasive category. In terms of the attitudinal persuasive speech, that's really for issues of controversy where you're not trying to convince the audience to take action to solve a particular problem. What you're after with the attitudinal speech is to focus on an issue of controversy, take a stand on that issue of controversy, and try to convince the audience that you are taking the right stand. So let's say that you're dealing with any topic that deals with gun safety or gun control. That would be an issue of controversy. You would have two sides to that particular issue, right? You could even apply it to the field of music, right? You could do an attitudinal persuasive speech on whether you think that Kendrick Lamar is a more socially significant rapper than J. Cole. That would be an issue of controversy, works as the attitudinal persuasive speech. So when you're looking at the three kinds of speeches, the informative speech can really be a speech on anything, as long as the content, the information that you share does not focus on a problem to be solved, does not focus on an issue of controversy. The behavioral persuasive speech would be speeches for problems that you're trying to convince the audience to take action to solve. The attitudinal persuasive speech would focus on an issue of controversy. There's two sides to the issue. You're taking a stand on one side. You're trying to convince the audience that your take on that issue of controversy is the correct one. So those are the three kinds of speeches that you'll be choosing from in order to do the academic speech. You'll either be doing an informative speech, a behavioral persuasive speech, or an attitudinal persuasive speech. And you'll notice on the topic proposals, that's on Canvas under the modules, you'll be required to turn in a topic proposal. And in that topic proposal, you're not only going to indicate the topic of the speech that you're going to do, but you also have to determine the type of speech, because the type of speech then will determine the outline format that you will use to put the speech together. So hopefully that clears things up for you. You have a much better understanding of what the three types of speeches are, and I'll be back with instructions on how to select a topic for the academic speech. Stay tuned.